Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I have a fascinating show today. You know, everybody that watches the show, you know that we love talking to founders of nonprofits. I mean, nonprofits make the world go round. We really are big believers in the nonprofit space. If you've watched the show, you know that I'm involved as an executive board member on a nonprofit called the Friendship Circle. And of course, we always talk about what it takes for nonprofits to be successful, because nonprofits have, you know, they have a big job as an entrepreneur. And yes, they are entrepreneurs. So we wanted to bring on the show a true leader in the space. Her name is Lori Zoss Kraska. And of course, she is the founder and chief principal of a company. It's a great name. I love the name. It's called the Growth Owl LLC. And of course, she's all about helping nonprofits grow. In other words, she's involved with the specialty of creating revenue and generating strategies for nonprofits with specific niches in fundraising and how to get sponsorships and how to talk to companies and corporations that come to the forefront to help these nonprofits. It's such a great honor to have Lori on the show today. Lori, welcome to the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you. I mean, I love your energy. You're ready to roll. Let's get going. Let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet. Tell us about the Growth Owl, and then we have so many questions for you.
Yeah, so Growth Owl LLC specializes in working with nonprofits, associations, purpose-driven organizations that want to represent themselves to find funding or resources with a corporation. So there's different ways that organizations can do that. They can try to talk to the corporate marketing department. They could try to talk to the corporate philanthropy department, as well as corporate social responsibility. And sometimes with the organizations I work with, especially the nonprofits, they're very strong in areas like individual membership, direct mail, planned giving. But when it comes to speaking with corporations about your nonprofit to get resources and other types of funding, it's not always a niche for nonprofits, but it's been a niche for me over my career. So that's really the space that I play in. I work and represent nonprofits, associations, purpose-driven organizations on their behalf to corporations. Also do things like training, so we can train staff on how to do that. Research, assessment to kind of learn a little about what the market is like for them in terms of potential. And also recruitment and retention has become another big part of what I do, because now that we're in this job market that's kind of crazy, there are really good people from all different types of nonprofits and purpose-driven organizations looking for different opportunities. And I help those organizations kind of assess that talent. So lots going on at Growth Owl LLC.
Wow, I love it so much. What's the conversation sound like? So an executive director or, you know, a president or a board director of the board of directors reaches out to you at Growth Owl. Maybe it's the CEO of the nonprofit. What's the conversation sound like? They say, hey, we're doing well in fundraising, but we need to, you know, bring in some corporate help, or maybe we're not doing well in fundraising. We need some assistance. What's the basic conversation sound like?
You hit it on the head. Very good. So usually it's the executive director, the president, someone in the C-suite, or someone that's like a vice president of development will reach out to me. I also get a lot of referrals, which is great. And the biggest thing I hear is, Lori, I just don't want to leave money on the table. And I love that. And like I said earlier, not everybody thinks a lot about putting a strategy around corporate support and engaging corporations into your nonprofit or purpose-driven organization. So when they reach out to me, they usually want to start it right away and be very aggressive in doing it. Or they want to learn more about how it works, what actually is corporate support in regards to their organization, and how can they create a strategy. So I work with both types of those clients. But yes, it usually starts at a higher level of the organization.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when we think about the nonprofits being matched, almost like a matchmaker, I guess, with a corporation, does certain corporations fit better with certain types of nonprofits? And how do you work that sort of scenario out in what you do at Growth Owl?
Yeah, I actually do kid around a lot that I am like a matchmaker. That's really the best way to describe it. The best way to make the match is just by looking at the vision, values, mission, and the tenets and the pillars that every corporation has in terms of their goals and community engagement. So, for instance, if I'm talking to a very large Fortune 500 that I want to target, most of the time they have a corporate philanthropy department or maybe their own foundation that has very specific interests. Maybe they have interests in primary education. Maybe they have social justice interests. Maybe they have interest in the environment. So starting from there and just having that knowledge and working in the space for so many years as I've had, it's relatively, I don't want to say easy, but I have a really good knowledge of what corporations want to work with which types of nonprofits. And then from there, find the right decision maker, bring them to the table and start to have a really good conversation that hopefully turns into a long-lasting partnership. Because when I bring clients and corporations together, I don't want to just do one project. I want this to be a very viable relationship that lasts a long time and is mutually beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, you've done such a great job. You get so many referrals. People talk about you within the nonprofit space as Growth Owl being the go-to company. What size corporation are we talking about? What type of revenue, what type of, position do they need before they can start really impacting nonprofits in a powerful way?
Well, honestly, I have a client that has 2 people on the staff. I also have a client that is multi-million-dollar nonprofit. So I can really work with anybody in terms of that space. It's just a matter of if you have the interest to want to at least dip your toe in the water per se to learn what's out there, I can find a way to work with you no matter what size you are.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So they can be even a small corporation can really have an impact in the nonprofit world. Whether they're small in terms of their revenue or small in terms of the number of employees that they have, it doesn't matter. Everybody needs to sort of put their minds and their money together to make a great impact in the world, of course, in the world of nonprofit. When we think about it, when we think about sort of the way in which a nonprofit functions, I look at it where they have 3 sets of clients. The first set of clients are the people that they serve. The second set of clients are really the people that work at the nonprofit because, they have to make sure the employees are happy. And then they have, of course, the people that provide the money, the people that provide the funding, the people that donate the money, Lori. So when I think about it, and I think about sort of this 3-tiered opportunity, you're really focused in on the money aspect of it. When we think about it, what attracts a company to a nonprofit? Like when they say to you, Lori, what do you have on tap? Which nonprofits can we help? What are they looking for? Are they looking for strength of organization? Are they looking for a unique sort of social impact that they have? Or are they looking for the team? What's the thing that the corporations look for to decide who they're going to lend the money to or give the money to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back to what I said earlier, first is if it aligns with the mission, vision, values, the pillars that they have put out there publicly of what they want to support, that's number 1. Number 2, and what I'm hearing a lot more now is how can we quantify this relationship as a success? Now, this is an area that a lot of nonprofit folks may struggle with because a lot of nonprofit folks are being pushed to kind of quantify their efforts of success. But what's nice about working with corporations, they usually will come back to you with, okay, these are the specific things we want to know at the end of the project or after we have given the support of a sponsorship money to see if it was successful. Things like how many kids did we impact in this project? How many families were served, food that were hungry? There's so much impact as well as brand impact. I mean, we also know that people like to support corporations and organizations that they also support. So if I'm somebody maybe looking for a vehicle and I don't really care what the vehicle is per se, but I do care about the manufacturer, the brand, and how are they in terms of community engagement? I might think of somebody like a Subaru who does a lot in the community, their local communities, and nationally, if we take a look at the footprint. So people are making decisions about what they purchase and where they purchase services based on how intense is an organization, a corporation involved in community engagement and sponsoring these types of organizations. So companies think about that as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When a nonprofit reaches out to you, how do you decide whether you want to take them on or not? Because I would imagine they need to have a certain impact in the community or society at large for you to be able to take them on and get them the type of result that they're expecting.
That's an excellent question. So the first thing I do is, for lack of a better term, a really good needs analysis to really find out what is their end goal with corporate support. So if it's a very vague end goal and it's just they want to do it because the Joneses are doing that, we're probably not going to be a good match. I need to know a lot more about why you want to go down this road. And I'm also looking for a really good commitment down this road. I will say corporate support, engaging corporations, it is a long road. And, sometimes things happen really quickly. I have been involved in those types of projects and it's great. But for the most part, it's a longer road, but it does reap a lot of rewards. So I do try to emphasize with potential clients, this is going to be a long game. This is a lot of strategy. It's going to be phone calls. It's going to be research. But I like to tell people there's no hacks to this. I know it's very popular right now to say, oh, here are the 5 hacks to get yourself in front of somebody. There is no hacks in this. It is hard work. But at the end of the day, it pays off.
Yeah, it pays off well, of course. Now, I'm interested in the process. Obviously, as an executive board member of a nonprofit, I'm interested in the process. So when somebody reaches out to you, Lori, what does it look like? Do you go to the meetings on Zoom? Do you go and represent the nonprofit? Or is it more of just a matchmaker where you make the match and then you let them deal with it? What's the integration of Lori Zoss, Kraska and Growth Owl once the introduction's made?
Yeah, it varies per client. I have a client now, a larger association, that they can represent themselves just fine. They just need somebody get them in the door. They just don't have the time to do kind of the hard work of kind of making the matches and making the initial call. I also have clients who want me there through the entire process. So I'm getting the engagement going. I'm getting the meeting going. I attend the meetings. I provide color commentary per se, right? Or I take more of a lead and I'll take it all the way through proposal and then we get the funding. So it really depends on the client. It's up to them.
Yeah, I love it, Lori. What is it about your background that brought you to this entrepreneurial journey? In other words, you've taken really the best of running a business, running a corporation, being an entrepreneur, and you matched it with the love of helping nonprofits and the love of helping corporations get their name out through the nonprofit sort of opportunity. What in your background brought these two things together in such a magical way?
So I spent just over 10 years in public broadcasting, specifically in this area of corporate support, where I managed a team that went out and found sponsorship dollars for all the wonderful programming that you see on the stations if you're a public media fan, or that you listen to in your car or on your smart speaker. And I loved it. I absolutely loved my job. But for years, I had this entrepreneurial bug that would not go away. And I knew at some point I was going to have to listen to it because it's there for a reason, right? So I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if I could take what I'm doing with my team in public broadcasting and take that model, tweak it a little bit, and open that type of service up to other types of nonprofits, purpose-driven organizations, and associations. And thankfully, it's been successful, and we've had some great case studies to share. So that's kind of the root of how it started, my time in public broadcasting. And actually, Andy, I still work with a lot of public broadcasters as well.
I love it. And of course, you've brought this love and passion of broadcasting to really broadcasting to the companies about what the nonprofits are doing and how they can engage. It's a great marriage. Now,
yes.
When we think about it, we think about Lori Zoss Kraska, one thing that came across in our pre-interview, you have a great attitude. I mean, the energy's popping off the screen. You love what you're doing. You have this very interesting thought about setbacks and opportunities, and you believe that you just keep moving forward. Where did that come from? And how has that helped you in your business career?
Well, it's funny. People ask me if I have kind of a process to what I do. And I've really been thinking about that actually in the past few months and have been kind of working on that. And I like to say that I like to align the mental, the message, and the motion to get you to the big moment. So for me, the mental is clearing out any doubt in your mind that, I can't talk to XYZ Corporation. They're so big. They're not going to want to talk to me. Or kind of playing small just to be safe. You got to get that out of your head, number one. Then number two, with the message, brevity is your friend. I think if there's one thing that I see with clients that I start to work with, if they get a contact and they get really excited to want to engage them, they almost give way too much information. In my work, the first thing we want to do is just show the connection to get them interested. As I said earlier, those mission, vision, values, pillars, right? If we can just create a strong connection with what the corporation is already doing, just establish that enough up front, you've got enough to create interest to get a meeting. That's how we start. So, brevity is your friend. Make that connection. And like I said earlier, there's no hacks to that. And then with the motion, you've got to stay active in the activity of doing that. Just because you've got one corporation engaged, don't get lazy. You got to talk to other corporations. Have a pipeline. I know that sounds kind of salesy, but there are sales attributes to this. Think about other types of corporations that you can engage, and you're going to be very successful. So all of that preparation gets you to that final moment where when you get that meeting, whether it is with a vice president or a chief executive officer who could be in a position to give you a six-figure gift of some sort, you can feel really good that you've done everything you can mentally, within your work, and with the research that you are prepared. Preparation is key. So I use those M's to get you to the moment, not just in my business, but I also utilize that in my life as well. And I'm really big on preparation. I'm really big on things like journaling, writing things down just to clear the mind and finding the right message. It really goes a long way.
I love it. I mean, think about those M's for the entrepreneurs watching the show. Rewind what Lori just said. I mean, those M's really take you through it. Get your mental, capacity ready, get your message perfected, stay in motion. And then when the moment finally arrives, you just hit it hard and you're ready to go. Again, one thing that's just a gem here is brevity is your friend.
Yes.
I speak to so many entrepreneurs and they go on and on and on and on, and they forget really what the message really is. And if they just kept it a little bit more brief, a little bit more succinct, a little bit more on point, that's a real winner, right?
Especially with very high level decision makers. If you're in a great situation where you get a referral or a contact to a CEO or a senior vice president, they are going to respect you so much more because you've been brief, because they see that as you've respected their time. And if there's anything we all know, time is money, right? For a lot of different reasons. So honestly, if there's one little tweak I could suggest to people when speaking with corporations and getting their attention, that is it, because I see that the most, both speaking and emails and proposals. Sometimes they can just be way too long. Be brief. Yeah,
that's great advice. I mean, that's great advice, not only for nonprofits, but, people in the for-profit business as well. I can see that being the title of your new book, the M's to success. I love it. Now, Lori, let's talk about it a little bit, because again, a nonprofit reaches out to you.
Mm-hmm.
they're not really sure where they're at, what they want to do. Do you offer consultation to the nonprofits where, they reach out to you? Hey, Lori, I've heard about you. I've heard about the Growth Owl, but I'm not 100% sure what I should do, like what my next step is. Do you give them consultation on that as well?
Absolutely. I definitely do a complimentary consultation. There's absolutely no pressure to have to move forward. And in a conversation with me, no matter what happens, I'll give you one or two really good nuggets that no matter what we do, you can take with you. And I've also learned from a business standpoint, people remember that and will come back to you because maybe they won't work with you right now for some reason, whether it's financial or strategic plan, whatever. But I've had people come back to me 2 years later that have remembered some of my nuggets and they are ready. So yeah, absolutely. Definitely we'll do a consultation. And, they can vary in terms of time. It just depends on the decision maker. I'd say they're anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes.
Wow, that's fantastic. And let's talk about the corporations now. We spoke about the nonprofits a bit. Let's talk about the corporations. Is there one area that you're finding now? It's 2022, the world has gone through a tough time the last couple of years. Of course, currently the world is very concerned about a potential of another challenge. What are the corporations looking for? Is there one thing in your mind where Lori Zoss Kraska is saying to herself, I think that they're going to be looking for this type of nonprofit now based on this group of challenges that's occurred worldwide?
Well, I'll tell you something very interesting that happened in 2020 besides the pandemic. And it didn't get a lot of attention because of the pandemic. Fortune 1000 companies were spending a lot of money bringing on chief diversity officers, chief sustainability officers, vice presidents of accessibility. And they were spending money in these areas in the midst of COVID-19. That says a lot. And it says that not only do they want to be front and center in areas like diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, but in putting these people in these high-level positions, they want to work with other community organizations that can help them in their mission to help those areas. So right now, anything with DEI and accessibility and sustainability is really, really of interest to larger organizations. And that is a huge project I've been working on with many of my clients on how do you align yourself with corporations and those types of decision makers, because they're a little different than the typical decision maker that's in marketing or even in philanthropy. These are people that are super, super stoked about what they do. They're so passionate, and sometimes they're easier to get access to, which is great. So we're definitely taking advantage of that. And that is not going to go away anytime soon. And I would also say whatever is reflective in the news right now is also reflective in what's of interest with a corporation as well. So, during COVID-19, besides, things like antibacterial and then the vaccine and such, food deserts and hunger centers became front and center because as people were furloughed or laid off or lost their jobs, food became an issue. So during COVID-19, there was quite an interest in corporations helping hunger centers or helping food centers. So just kind of watch what's going on in the news, because sometimes larger corporations will definitely adapt their interests based on what's happening in the world.
Very interesting. You mentioned accessibility. Let's talk about that just briefly for the entrepreneurs that run a business. Let's talk about what you're talking about for companies that are looking for accessibility.
Exactly. So when I talk about accessibility, that's very much a broad term for inclusion for people that maybe they have some sort of physical handicap. Maybe there is something that maybe prevents them from being like others in their office, right? Or in their community. You could be hearing impaired. You could be vision impaired. So what I think is great, these Fortune 1000 companies specifically, and I know other companies are doing it well, but these companies are actually spending money to engage these types of folks who are very talented and they're hard workers, but they just have to find ways to do things in a different way. So not only is that becoming more a part of their workforce, but they're working with outside partners and nonprofits to be compliant and to find ways to really help these folks in terms of really being a leader in accessibility in your company. So that is another area to definitely keep watching.
Yeah, that's powerful. Of course, the nonprofit I'm involved with, I mentioned the Friendship Circle. They opened up a bakery. They bought a bakery.
Oh, that's great.
And it's super cool. It's called Dakota Bakery. And what they've done is they've introduced people with special needs into the bakery to learn how to bake and learn how to be part of this system. And they're learning how to actually make money and be part of have an employment. So it's fantastic. I love it so much. I mean, wow, you're really in the middle of it, Lori. This is great. Now, I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship before I let you go. And again, thank you so much for cutting some time out. I know you're helping so many nonprofits, with their growth and generating strategies for very good growth and future opportunities. Let's talk to the younger entrepreneurs watching the show. Maybe they're hitting a tough time. Maybe they're hitting a roadblock in their entrepreneurial journey. Maybe they're freezing the frame. Maybe you could share some of that, Lori, Zoss Kraska excitement and information with regard to what it takes to get through a tough time as a business owner and come out the other side being very happy that you've moved forward and continued to improve.
I like to first say that you got to feel the fear and make the jump anyway. That's probably the biggest thing, because making the jump into entrepreneurship, that's probably one of the biggest jumps you're going to make. But I can tell you, once I made the jump, I never see myself ever going back. I love being an entrepreneur. Now, I would say in tough times, you just have to keep plowing through. Try different things. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't get set in old ways. Be open to change. My business, although the core has always been that corporate support, it's had many iterations in the past 4.5 years that I've been doing this. And it has those iterations because of what's going on in the business world. So for instance, I mentioned at the top that I'm doing a lot with recruitment. Trying to find top sponsorship salespeople for nonprofits, right? That's not something I did even 2 years ago. But I was able to take my skills from being a senior director who hired a lot in my previous positions and bring it to my clients because I could still see talent. I still know what to find, right? So if you're adaptable to understand that your business will change, you're going to be in a much better mindset, in a much better place than somebody that's kind of stuck on it has to be this way. And when I was reaching out to other entrepreneurs before I started Growth Owl, that's probably the biggest piece of advice I got from good people. Things will change and you have to adapt. If you stay stuck in what you do, that's where the problem is going to be.
I love it. And of course, you don't look at things as setbacks. You look at things as information.
You're right. That's so true, Andy.
Right?
Yes.
I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all information because it tells you where to move forward. Right. So if I'm trying to call a Fortune 500 on behalf of a client and I've tried to contact them 8 times, okay, I think I'm going to stop. Right. Where, some people keep going. There's a balance to that. Right. So yes, I love that. That's perfect. It is information for you to utilize for your own success.
I love it. Information to utilize for your next move. Now, Lori.
Yes.
Again, thank you for cutting some time out today. I just want to have one more question because I'm very interested in it. You deal with, Fortune 1000 companies, Fortune 100 companies, Inc. 500 companies on one end, and on the other end, you work with a lot of nonprofits. We always talk that corporate culture starts at the top.
Yes.
When you deal with a nonprofit or you deal with a Fortune, 100 company, do you see that the corporate culture is set from the top and works its way through the organization? How does all that work from your perspective when you meet so many people?
It usually works that way. And I think that's why someone like me is very valuable, because one of the reasons I'm very good at what I do, not just because of experience, is I'm a chameleon. I know if I'm going into one corporation, if it's more of a manufacturing background versus if I'm going into a corporation that's more of like that IBM style, the suit, the tie, what have you, I need to be an effective chameleon to adapt to that situation and translate on behalf of my client so the message gets to that person. So I think that's another reason why I'm successful. I'm adaptable in very different corporate situations. And being that I worked on the corporate side for so long, I understand their thoughts. I understand the reforecasting they have to do. I understand the tough decisions. I understand all the budgeting. So I'm able to bring that experience to the table and really kind of be a translator between my client and the corporation, but also a chameleon to adapt into the environment that I'm in. So yes, the environment does start from the top, and it's really my responsibility to figure that out quickly so it helps my client and myself.
I love it. You're helping so many people, and you're not only helping the nonprofits, but you're helping the corporations to get their brand into sort of local communities or national communities with sort of the backing of the nonprofit, which puts the corporation in a very good light in front of their consumers, in front of their clients. And it's just a wonderful package that gets put together. Lori, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today. This has been really great. I hope to bring you back on the show so we can talk about more of your successes. And I think the nonprofit world is just so needed right now, more than ever in this society that we have. And thank you, Lori, for being a leader in the field and coming on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for your time.